الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله
أشهد أن محمد رسول الله
حي على الصلاة
لا حول ولا قوة
حي على الصلاة
لا حول ولا قوة
حي على الفلاح
لا حول ولا قوة
حي على الفلاح
لا حول ولا قوة
الله أكبر الله أكبر
الله أكبر الله أكبر
لا إله إلا الله
الله أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا مولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله. In the name of Allah, the gracious, the merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the universe, the master of the day of judgment. I bear witness and testimony to the oneness of Allah, to His magnificence, His omnipotence, His might, His glory, to His being the creator and sustainer of all things, the giver of life, the guider of hearts, the master of the day of judgment. And I bear witness to the fact that Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam is the servant and final messenger. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him and upon all those who choose to tread in his path until the last day. In our religious tradition, Allah Azza wa Jal gives to us many insights as to why He created us. He talks about worship as a reason as to why we were made, إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, that you were made but to worship. He talks about istikhlaf, inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa, that He would send us to be a representative on the earth, not just a steward or caretaker, which people mistakenly translate, but you're Khalifa because you're what comes next. The Quran talks about ibtila, the need to have a growth mindset, that challenges will come, trials and tests will come, and you choose how it is that you meet those things. But the mindset of the believer is that you meet with such a vantage point that you are not scared today to meet the one you can become tomorrow. It talks about isti'mar, the cultivation of civilization, beauty, civility, the arts, umran. There's not by chance that the prophetic mission of the best of creation, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, culminated in the establishment of a Medina, of a city. And we can go through so many different things that the Quran gives to us directly as to why it was that we were created. But you're not going to find a reason that says Allah created you so that you would be perfect. That He made you so that you wouldn't make mistakes. That you wouldn't have flaws. If anything, what is indicative from the Quran, even simply by the way our Creator calls upon us and names us, is that we are a creation that will make mistakes. Can we have everybody move up again, please? If there's any carpet in front of you, please fill it up. And this is an important thing to understand, especially as we draw closer and closer to the coming month of Ramadan. May Allah bless us to reach it and take benefit from it. That mistakenly many people would assume, consciously or unconsciously, it can exist in both ways. It doesn't just have to be explicit, it can be implicit that the ideal pursuit of this religion is a pursuit of perfection. This is a futile pursuit in accordance with what our religion teaches us. We are bashar, humanity. Because the bashar essentially being identified by the way that we are created, our skin, but more often than not, we are referred to as nas or insan. Uns in Arabic refers to intimacy. The insan as a creature needs companionship. It doesn't have to be that you hang out with 1,000 people, but even if it's just one person, being alone is very different from being lonely. May Allah keep us from ever being lonely or the reasons why anyone is lonely. But uns refers to that type of intimacy. Nisyan, also a potential root of the word insan, refers to forgetfulness. That you're going to make mistakes. That the first person was the first to forget is what our tradition teaches us. Adam alayhi salam ate from the tree when he wasn't supposed to. When he is shown his progeny amongst all of his progeny, he sees the beauty of Dawood alayhi salam, and when he asks, who is this? And Allah says, this is your son Dawood, and Adam alayhi salam allocated 1,000 years of his life. He says, can I give to him some of my lifespan? And he gives him some decades of his life. And now at year 960, when he is meant to be taken from the world and the angel of death comes to engage, the prophets are asked, they're not just taken. Adam says, I still got 40 years left. Embedded within just the way we are called is the idea that we will make mistakes. And this is an important thing to understand, because when you get to a place now where societally there becomes an emphasis on perfectionism rather than a striving towards excellence, which our religion teaches us. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. That Allah tells us in the Quran that He made us in the most beautiful of forms. But when you look at these words just simply from the standpoint of language, the beauty of us as humanity is in our God's perfect love embracing us in our imperfection, because that's what perfect love does. It's not conditionalized the way a lot of what we engage in relationships these days impose upon us. You make a mistake in the slightest, everything just goes down. You can't get to a place where you are able to even celebrate an achievement. You got an A, the question is, why didn't you get an A+? You got this, well, why didn't you do this? People who are new to religion get to a place where they can't even grow at a pace that makes sense. You got to pray once before you pray 5 times. And when you sit down and the wrong person's engaging you and you say, today I prayed once, they're going to say, that's not good enough. You get to 5, they're going to say, well, you're not praying your sunnahs. You start praying your sunnahs, well, you're not praying in the masjid. Every single thing is in a place where the growth is not able to be celebrated, because the process now is not about a value that is striving for excellence in the spirit of spiritual refinement that is ihsan. It is about the validation of others in a society that seeks to break us down in the futile pursuit of perfectionism. And you start to then see what is not there as opposed to what is there, both within yourself as well as the other. You don't want to have the heart, man, that somebody walks by you and you start to assess them up and down by a criteria that who endowed you with that capacity to begin with? We are meant to be a population, especially in a world that is ever increasing in its egocentricity and selfishness, that is looking for a reason to bring people in, not push them out. And the mindset's important because people are going to experience realities very differently because of metaphysical variables that will enable us to see potential capacity in Ramadans. And understanding that the religion tells us about purpose quite often through the pages of the book that were given to us. Show me the page that Allah tells you that your son is supposed to be the most perfect person in the world. Show me the page that says that your partner, your life partner, your spouse cannot make mistakes. Show me where your own self-talk is validated in the way that you hate on yourself and hate on yourself and hate on yourself. إن الله رفيق ويحب الرفق ويؤتي على الرفق ما لا يؤتي على الأنف. That the best of creation, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, says that indeed Allah Azza wa Jal is kind and He loves kindness and He gives for gentleness what He does not give for harshness. May Allah make us people who are gentle to each other and to ourselves. The pursuit of this is imperative to understand. Because if I don't want to go back to who I was before I came into Ramadan, my default understanding of myself cannot be that I am a garbage human being. You can understand yourself to be good within the frame that understands a good person can always be better. And the recognition that this is a distinct value from what it is that is simply about the externals and the outwards. Perfectionism brings us to places that is not just about task orientation that I have to do to the best of my capacity, but through that I seek a validation of my inner self that is battling between a heart and a nafs that is lazy, that wants me to not see myself as who I am or to be bold enough to see myself the way Allah sees me, but the way Shaitan wants me to perceive myself. Shaitan is a self-loathing individual who cannot admit the realities of his mistake, and for an eternal existence is going to go to whatever extent possible to not have to give in to the idea that he was wrong. And that's not a mindset or an attitude that you want to adopt within yourself. Religion in and of itself needs culture to exist. It's a necessary variable. You cannot have religion that does not exist without culture. You go to China, Islam looks Chinese. You go to Nigeria, Islam looks Nigerian. You go to Morocco, it looks Moroccan. You go to India, it looks Indian. And this is necessary. But where culture and religion can also conflict, that transcends numerous cultures, is the unhealthy integration of shame and guilt that does not allow for communal experience to be something that's uplifting, but takes on a mindset of what would people think in a way that degrades the inner self, while the outer self is left in a place of not knowing how it is that it can belong. We don't want that to be the case for any one of us in this room or anyone who's going to come here after we are here. And a fundamental building block in our relationship with Allah is predicated with the building block of how we relate and connect to ourselves. It is hard to love fully outward when you don't even like you. So why do you pursue what it is that is futile? You're not going to ever be 100% perfect, and that's what it is that we are supposed to be. If Allah wanted you to be an angel, He would have made you an angel. He made you a human for a reason. There are three modes in which this thing of perfectionism exists within us. One, we impose upon ourselves ideals and attitudes that are just unreasonable. Two, society imposes upon us, similarly, attitudes, ideals of perfectionism. And then third, I impose upon you. Not me specifically, but a person in general can impose on another. And I have to understand my capacity of what it is that I place on someone that renders for them this unhealthy mindset. When you look at studies that compare what is contemporary to what it was that was not even centuries ago, but just decades, years ago, the pool of young people who exist that were impacted by these three variables, the second one of societal pressures, increased threefold in terms of those who said, I feel like the world just wants me to be perfect. And it's deeply attached to Ramadan, because one of the ingredients that impacts this so much is what liberalism thinks creates freedom, but in fact creates suffocation, is the abundance of choice that exists that now has dissatisfaction with even my pursuit through purchasing of novelty and temporary happiness, because I'm so broken inside by people telling me that I'm never going to be good enough. I can't even enjoy what I have with gratitude and satisfactory appreciation, because I see somebody else who picked it a different way, and I say, maybe I should have done it like that. And so when you have hadith that say, as-sawmu junnah, that fasting is a shield, what is it shielding you from? The capacity to reclaim self-control, the ability to not just think, because everybody thinks, but to choose what you think about and how you think about the things you think about. This is what taqwa is. May Allah make us from the muttaqeen. And you want to make the transition that is rooted in now being somebody who imposes perfectionism on the other, subservience to a society that makes it happen, or saying it to yourself and shifting in the degree towards the striving of excellence. And in our tradition, this value is important to understand, because you can't pick up a fiqh book and it's going to tell you why you don't wake up for Fajr. It's going to tell you how to pray Fajr. It's going to tell you how to get ready for Fajr. This is how you make wudu, a clean spot to pray. You face towards the Kaaba. These are the clothes that you wear. Here's the standing, the bowing, the kneeling, the prostrating. It gives you the nuts and bolts. How's it going to tell you why you're not getting up for it? It's not. Islam is about reality. It's not about chasing after romanticized notions and ideals, utopian-esque environments that are simply non-existent. You have a prophet whose companions were the best generation, and they struggled with making mistakes. And then they got back up on their feet and they tried again, because they weren't seeking to elevate themselves by denigrating one another or putting upon each other standards that were unbearable. They were simply human. They knew what it meant to be insan. And the goal was never perfection. The goal was striving for spiritual excellence. 75 times the Quran says the construct of faith and righteous deeds. Amanu wa amilu salihat, or some derivation thereof, that you have belief and you act in this mode of righteousness. May Allah make us from those who do this. When you are acting in accordance with this, the idea from the verse is not about the outcome. It's just that you're trying. You get up motivated by a conviction, a belief that brings you to a place that you are moving towards something. The goal is not necessarily rooted in whether you achieve through the action alone, but the fact that you got up and tried. And in the trying, this is what our tradition tells us. You actually even just think about doing something good. The Prophet says it's written down as a reward. You think about doing something not good and you don't do it, it's written down as a good deed still. And if you get up and you do what the good thought brought you to, it's written 10 times over. How do you not have a God that's looking for a reason for you to succeed? But He's not the one imposing this reality on us. Why do you think somebody is deficient if they're not married? Why? Why do you think it's a problem if your child marries somebody from a different culture than yours? Why? Why do you think it's a problem if somebody doesn't own a home but they just simply rent an apartment? Why? Why is it an issue if somebody takes the bus instead of has their own car? How come someone who has a car is better than someone who doesn't? Why? And whose standards are you understanding the answers to these questions to? If somebody doesn't have children, why are they lesser than somebody who does? This is where you go back to an understanding of whose sunnah it is that you follow. Which way of existence do you want to strive for? And who would it be that you want to embody? The man, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is simply just meant to be a reminder of who God is, that's going to tell you that you're still good, even if you're not married, even if you don't make a ton of money, even if you don't have babies, even if you're divorced, even if you rent and you don't buy. Or the society that tells you contrary to that. I want to read to you something that I thought juxtaposed these two things, the vice of perfectionism and the value of striving for excellence, in a way that was very profound and highlighted and illustrated. And just listen from your hearts and think about how it applies back to you in these three modes. I impose this on myself, the anti-black society that I live in. The ideology of whiteness imposes it upon me. And when you are the ancestor of enslaved populations, colonized populations, populations impacted by imperialism, you are in a place where you are dealing with generational traumas from these things. And then third, how do I impose it on others? If Allah blessed you with people in your life, it wasn't so that you would make them hate themselves. Perfectionism is fueled by external validation, the desire to gain the approval of others. Striving for excellence is fueled by intrinsic motivation, the desire for self-improvement and personal growth. Try your best not to justify behaviors any longer through the automated response of, well, what would people say? What would your grandfather say if he knew that you wanted to marry somebody that wasn't part of our culture? What is Allah going to say? That you think it's okay to utilize justifications of racisms to inhibit somebody from moving forward in what will give them contentment and joy. Perfectionism is rooted in the belief that, quote, if I am good enough, I will be accepted and loved. Striving for excellence is rooted in the belief that, quote, my accomplishments do not define me. I derive fulfillment from the process of pursuing what is meaningful to me. The perfectionist views mistakes as personal defects. The striver for excellence views mistakes as opportunities to learn and try harder. Perfectionism is the result of too much of our identity being tied to achieving external outcomes. Striving for excellence is the result of our identity being tied to engaging in the process of achievement with integrity. Perfectionism is a form of fear, fear of failing, fear of what other people think, fear of not being good enough, fear of not being loved as a result of not being good enough. Striving for excellence is a form of courage. It involves taking action towards worthwhile goals in spite of the judgments and opinions of others. Perfectionism is a form of overprotection. It is an attempt to shield oneself from criticism and judgment by making no mistakes. Paradoxically, this makes the perfectionist more fragile and less capable of dealing with judgment and criticism in the future. Striving for excellence is a form of courage. It involves persisting in the face of criticism. The striver for excellence is resilient and anti-fragile because he or she uses criticism and feedback to grow and improve. This is hadith. Inna lillahi ta'ala aniyatan min ahli al-ard wa aniyatu rabbikum qulubi ibadihi as-salihin ahabbuha alyanuha wa arakkuha. That Inna lillahi ta'ala aniyatan min ahli al-ard, that indeed for your Lord there are vessels amongst the people of the earth. وَآنِيَةُ رَبِّكُمْ قُلُوبِ عِبَادِهِ الصَّالِحِينَ, and the vessels of your Lord are the hearts of his righteous servants. أَحَبُّهَا أَلْيَنُهَا وَأَرَقُّهَا. He loves the ones that are most lean, most light, and most soft, most tender. May Allah give us hearts that are like this. A heart is lean because it's willing to take advice and counsel and feedback. It knows that spiritual improvement necessitates having something to improve upon. Perfectionism is a vicious circle. The perfectionist attributes judgment and criticism to imperfect execution rather than viewing it as an inevitability of life. This results in attempts to be more perfect in order to gain approval. Striving for excellence has no such feedback loop. In short, perfectionism is a vice that often masquerades as a virtue. There is no amount of perfectionism that is good, just as there is no degree of cowardice that is desirable. Think about what it means when we talk about whiteness as an ideology, curriculum that you have been exposed to, that pretty much every year of formative times in your life, you are tested again and again and again in a way that renders unhealthy competition. Think about how it is that you are put through processes that fundamentally make no sense. Some of us have innate aptitude in certain fields versus others. You might be good at science, somebody else might be good at the arts, somebody else might be good with numbers, somebody else might be good with a basketball, somebody else might be good at communication. But everybody somehow has to take all of the same classes and get graded with a rubric that is just generalized amongst diverse populations. And then young people, especially today, are built into systems where rankings are imposed based on a system of ranking that was developed by the people who created the systems to make you hate yourself in the first place if you didn't somehow get a certain grade on a test that's arbitrary. If you got money, you could go pay an SAT preps course. People will teach you how to take the test. It doesn't mean you're intelligent. They'll just tell you how to get a perfect score on it. And at some level, you have to embrace it so that you're not walking around in default settings in a world that is built on the idea that it only sees itself as an ends. This is a challenge with modern day secularity. In addition to other things, it wants you to believe that this world is simply it. And then when you believe that, why wouldn't you live for the validation of this world and everything that it throws at you? How often growing up did you hear positivity, where you achieved, somebody told you they were proud of you? How many days have gone by where someone has thanked you for something. And with the caveat that you got to do something that's worthy of gratitude in order to be thanked for it. But understanding, how often have you heard it? And at the other frame of it, how often have you appreciated somebody? Even if for decades they have made food for you, you can still every single day tell them thank you for doing what it is that they've done for you for the last 30, 40, 50 years of your life. Entitlement breeds these types of pursuits. The absence of language that our tradition is built upon. Understanding that this is a big part of our deen. The first hadith that you are taught pretty much in any majlis is called Hadith al-Rahmah, the hadith of compassion. Ar-Rahimuna yarhamuhum ar-Rahman, irhamu man fil ard, yarhamkum man fis sama. That the merciful one is merciful to those who are merciful. Be merciful on the earth. The one who is in the heavens will be merciful to you. That means you break this cycle of the vice of perfectionism and you move and shift now towards the value of striving for excellence by being compassionate with yourself. Not seeing kindness ever as a weakness, but seeing it as a strength. And enabling yourself to recognize that what was the point of this deen to begin with? They don't send prophets to the world because everybody's doing great. Allah sends a messenger where people go off track. And the Meccan society in which the prophet was sent into was a society that was permeated by egocentricity. How can you have God-centricity? Or how do you not see an unhealthy imbalance of the nafs when people are willing to bury their daughters alive? But you're forcing your daughter to get married to people she does not want to get married to. You're silent while your father does this to your sister. Where does it come from? And understanding it's not a deen that's rooted in a moral relativism. What is ideal and good is defined by Allah and actualized by His messenger and deepened in our ability to understand it through His example. And you can't anomalize what our tradition is filled with. There are tons of hadith where the Prophet, who is the walking, talking manifestation of the Quran, is telling people He loves them, helping them walk through the struggles that they have, not identifying them based off of norms in a stratified society that believes that race and class should determine who has and who has not. He is anti these things. And we land back in a place where we have opportunity to dilute that nonsense from Jahiliyyah, may Allah protect us from it, and embrace what this deen is calling us towards by just getting back to what it's about. Trying to live better does not mean that you are trying to live perfect. Perfectionism keeps a lot of us waiting for the best perfect moment to do something. It keeps us from taking viable partners who we meet because we're always wondering, is somebody else going to be better than what it is that's here? Is this the right time for me to execute on this? And I want you to think, who benefits from minorities like us being afraid to live to our potential? Who benefits from a community as strong and as large as ours being worried about how it is that our mistakes might define us more than seeing our mistakes as a means for us to just get closer to our successes? And each one of us has this choice to make. 3 frames exist, and there's a likelihood that at some level we have interacted with at least one, if not overlapped. The first 2, not necessarily our faults, that I impose upon myself unreasonable pursuits of perfectionism. Believe in a God that believes in you more than you believe in yourself. Use religion as a basis for empowerment, not as a way for you to walk on eggshells, and go back to the foundations. Read your Quran and see what it actually says. It'll help to stifle and make you a person that knows how to be kind to yourself and compassion, not making justifications for the wrongs that you do, but getting to a place where your movement forward is gradual, but still moving forward nonetheless. The second bucket, not our fault. Society imposes upon us certain things. That's what it is that they're trying to do. It creates suffocation and paralysis. When you live with a recognition that this world is in fact important, but its proportionality to the world beyond this one is going to give you an understanding that it's still a means to something, let these people have this world, man. Live for something bigger. And then the third, which some of us fall into, and you got to reflect on it if it's you, because you do not want to be doing this to anybody. And if you don't reflect and you push it away, saying that, well, here's why it's okay for me to do this to somebody else, you can do whatever you want, man. But there's two realities that all of us are going to face, regardless of what it is that we hold in this world. Every one of us is going to die one day. There's nothing you can do to deny that. And the number two reality, nobody's going to get away with anything. Everybody's going to have to explain why they did it the way that they did it. And if you are imposing unreasonable pursuits of perfectionism on the people Allah blessed you to be a caretaker for, whether they share blood with you or not, they work for you, they are friends of yours, just reflect on it. That is not something you want to put on somebody else outwardly or inwardly. And the striving for excellence is about all of us leaning on one another, really embracing the title and rank of what it means to be a sister or brother to somebody else, and not letting anybody feel that they have to go through their struggles in any which way alone. This coming month of Ramadan, let your intention be that you are striving for excellence, not perfection. And when you move forward, even if the growth is a little bit in comparison to who you were when you came in, you started in a place where you were good. A good person can be better. And the motivation of it, inshallah, will keep us acting on the lessons that we learned from that month of Ramadan through every tomorrow that we see, and enable us to meet our Lord in as best of a state as possible, saying as best as we can, we try to fulfill the purpose for which it was that you created us. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله تعالى فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا مولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله. Inshallah ta'ala, we are 2 weeks out from the coming month of Ramadan. May Allah bless us to reach it and take benefit from it. As a slight pivot from what it was that we were discussing in the first part of the khutbah, I want to lay a seed of something that I'll come back to, inshallah, if Allah permits me, in coming weeks. But especially for those of you who are college students at this university, as well as all of us in general, as you plan what it is that you will be doing in this coming month of Ramadan, the calendar year, uniquely this year, academically, lines up for college students at this university and many others, where in the last 10 nights of Ramadan, you will have a spring break. You should try to do i'tikaf in a masjid during those 10 days. When I was 18, I was an undergrad at this university. Ramadan was in December at that time, to give you an idea how old I am. And I finished my exams and I went into the masjid and I did i'tikaf with a lot of other young people in the masjid that time. And all you're doing is consuming good. People are making iftar for you. They're making suhoor for you. You're hearing Quran. You're not hearing vice, gossip, yelling, screaming. You don't even have to do anything. You can just sleep in the masjid and it's ibadah. But the deprivation and separation from what is not good and consuming not good, and the spiritual retreat of consuming only what is positive and good, I could still remember what it felt like to walk out of that masjid when Ramadan finished into a parking lot that I had gone into so many times, but it looked so different. And I would want that for each of you. And you have to understand, in relation to what we were talking about before, it's not a quote unquote good Muslim that is the one that does itikaf. Anybody can do it, and you're good to begin with. It's not the person who stands on the mimbar only. It's not the person who leads the prayers or leads the halaqat. Every one of us is entitled to have a relationship with Allah. And so as you're planning strategically, think about it now, a month out from that last third of Ramadan. May Allah bless us to reach it. And in the coming weeks, we'll probably talk about what its significance is and how it is that we can take from it, whether we're students or not. And if you have a young person in your life, don't force them to do it. Don't say, I went to Jummah today and Khalid said everybody who's young should go for i'tikaf. That's the opposite of what we're talking about. But give them an insight as to why that might be something that's beneficial for them. Ask them if there's friends that they have. Religion can be very intimidating. And you can imagine if you're a kid who spends most of your week as the only person that believes what you believe in a school that's built on teaching you the opposite quite often of what you believe. And now you have to go in a space that you don't have connection to. There's got to be love and compassion that's attached to that. And a recognition that communication isn't I just throw words at you and think not about how you receive them. And on the other end, if they come and ask you, can I do this? Don't get worried that they're becoming too Muslim. It's a good thing for the heart, and you want to encourage these types of things. It's not about being away from people, it's about being away from distractions. And our Prophet did this with regularity at the end of Ramadan, and his last Ramadan did it for 20 days. There's a reason as to why he's doing it. If you can make that your routine, ask your friends while you are here who wants to do it with you. Allah knows best, but I can guarantee it's going to be an impactful experience. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد في الأولين وفي الآخرين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين. We begin this supplication in your name, Ya Allah. Beseech you to send your choicest salutations upon your most beloved sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. We ask that you shower your infinite mercy upon this gathering, granting each and every one who is present herein and our loved ones only the best in this world and the best in the next. We ask, Ya Allah, that if all of us are meant to be together only at this time, at this place, whether we are young or old, male or female, regardless of our race, our ethnicity, our social class, our country of origin, our cultural heritage, whether we are Muslim or come from a different walk of life, Ya Rabbi, if our individual hearts are meant to be in the presence of all other hearts that are gathered here only at this time, at this place, then gather us all together again in the best of places in the world beyond this one. Increase us, Ya Allah, in all that is good. Increase us in courage, compassion, and confidence. Protect us from affliction, anxiety, and anguish. Remove from our hearts any feelings of bitterness, jealousy, animosity, or envy towards any of your creation. Grant us hearts that are filled with understanding and hope, hearts that are drawn towards things of real goodness and beauty, hearts that find themselves deep in your remembrance, for indeed in your remembrance do hearts find rest. Bless us, Ya Allah, to take as much as we can from these remaining days and nights of Sha'ban, and enable each one of us to reach, take benefit from, and grow through the coming month of Ramadan. Help us to use these days and nights with an understanding of how they will inform the way we stand in those blessed days and nights. And let not any one of us be in a state where the people we are today is afraid any longer to meet the ones that we can become tomorrow. Let our growth be gradual, Ya Allah, and surround us with hearts that are gentle and tender. Send to us reminders often and always of what true contentment really is, and make us those who make decisions through our hearts and never at their expense. Make the best of our deeds the last of our deeds, Ya Rabb, and let not any one of us leave this world other than in a state that is most pleasing to you. Protect us always from hearts that are not humble, tongues that are not wise, and eyes that have forgotten how to cry. Forgive us for our shortcomings and guide and bless us all. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين وأقيموا الصلاة. You ready? Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Hayya ala salati, hayya ala salah, hayya ala al-falahi, hayya ala al-falah. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. استووا أقيموا. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ويل لكل همزة لمزة الذي جمع مالا وعدده يحسب أن ماله أخلده كلا لينبذن في الحطمة وما أدراك ما الحطمة نار الله الموقدة التي تطلع على الأفئدة إنها عليهم مؤصدة في عمد ممددة. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إذا زلزلت الأرض زلزالها وأخرجت الأرض أثقالها وقال الإنسان ما لها يومئذ تحدث أخبارها بأن ربك أوحى لها يومئذ يصدر الناس أشتاتا ليروا أعمالهم فمن يعمل مثقال ذرة خيرا يره ومن يعمل مثقال ذرة شرا يره الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر السلام عليكم ورحمة الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله الله أكبر استغفر الله استغفر الله استغفر الله
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Once people are done praying their sunnah and nafil prayers, there's a few people who are going to be taking their shahada, inshallah, so you can stick around for that. I think there's one brother and two sisters who are going to be taking their shahada at Jummah. You can be here to support them in that. The sadaqah from today is going to be going to the IC, so anything you could give, we'd appreciate it. All of our programs are run off of donations, so please do give what you can. There's a few people in the community that are looking for housing. So if you have an empty room, apartment, like are looking for a roommate, please let us know and we can make those connections, or if you know of people who have those resources. As well as there's many people who are looking for work, part-time or full-time. So if people have awareness of job opportunities, recruiting efforts, please let us know and we can circulate those as well. Whatever we can do to help one another in that regard. Please make dua. It's a very difficult time for a lot of people right now. May Allah grant them ease. So again, if you can stick around to be with our brothers and sisters when they take their shahada.
Inshallah, I appreciate it. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.